Our inner state doesn't just affect how we feel, it affects the reality that we're able to perceive through our senses. Most spiritual traditions don't tell us to eliminate fear. They tell us to be able to look at it differently. Fear isn't your enemy, but if you allow it to control your perception, then it definitely isn't. It's about becoming more skillful at working with it, isn't it? Welcome back to HDL Podcast, your discerning guide to modern spirituality. No guru required. I'm Jason Rigby, and today we're going to dive into something that affects every single one of us. And sometimes we don't even realize it. It's how fear literally shrinks our perception of what's possible. Now, I want you to think about the last time you had a really big dream or goal. Maybe it was starting your own business, having a difficult conversation in your relationship with your partner, or finally going to your boss and asking for the promotion. What happened to that dream? Did you go for it? Did you go like full throttle? Or did you start seeing all the reasons why it wouldn't work out? Today, we're going to explore how fear doesn't just make us feel bad, it actually changes what we're able to see and the way that we perceive our reality. Now, this is neuroscience. This isn't just about positive thinking. This is about the neuroscience of perception and how we can practically work with our nervous system to begin to expand our reality. Let's get into the neuroscience of this. What's actually happening to your brain when fear begins to take over? Yes, it's fight or flight, but your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, detects a threat. And it doesn't just trigger the fight or flight response, it literally narrows your field of vision. It's called attentional narrowing. This is a survival feature from evolution. If you're being chased by a tiger in the jungle, you don't want to be distracted by, oh, look, there's some pretty flowers. You need laser focus on the threat, and not just the threat, but you need laser focus on how you're going to survive. Your brain is completely taken over in that fear. But in our modern world, most of our fears aren't about physical survival. What are they about? Social survival and emotional survival. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. Our brain, with evolutionary psychology, responds the same way. It begins to narrow our perception. Mark Douglas, who wrote one of my favorite books, A Disciplined Trader, he observed this phenomenon in the financial markets. He noticed that traders who were afraid of losing money would literally stop seeing profitable opportunities. Their fear just didn't make them hesitant. It made them perceptually blind to possibilities right in front of them. And Douglas puts it this way, and this is such great spiritual teachings. He said the market is neutral. The stock market he's talking about. It doesn't care about your bills, your ego, or your fears. But your fears will determine what information you allow yourself to see. And this is profound spiritual wisdom, guys. This is disguised as trading psychology. Our inner state doesn't just affect how we feel, it affects the reality that we're able to perceive through our senses. So how does fear show up in different life areas? I think number one for everyone be money and abundance, right? And I want to get practical here. When you're afraid about money, what happens? You start seeing scarcity everywhere. You notice every single bill. And then what happens when you get the bill on the email, the fear sets in, you open your app to see how much money you have. You see there's a negative red, fear sets in. Every price increase, every story that's out there about economic doom in the economy. And what begins to happen when you begin seeing scarcity everywhere, you become blind to opportunities. The freelance gig your friend mentioned, the investment opportunity, the ways you could add value and increase your income, you don't see any of those. I had a client once trying to work on her credit card debt, and she kept turning down speaking opportunities. She didn't realize the fees for the speaking opportunities would have covered at least 2 months of her debt payments. Fear made her literally invisible to abundance. Now, it's just not money. I think second thing for all of us would be relationships, right? And in relationships, fear of abandonment or rejection creates what psychologists call a confirmation bias. So if you're afraid your partner doesn't love you, they really don't love you, they're going to find somebody else, maybe they're having an affair, your brain, and we've all been there, haven't we? Jealousy has hit us all, hasn't it? What happens? Your brain becomes hypervigilant and it looks for any little tiny sign of disinterest. Oh my God, he checked his phone during dinner, or she seemed really tired when she got home. but you become perceptually blind to the hundreds of the small acts of love and care. And fear doesn't just make us paranoid. It really makes us bad data collectors. It does it about our own lives. I think the third thing is career, right? Career and work. And that, I think, the biggest fear for me with work, and I think for a lot of you, would be the fear of failure. And this often masquerades, it has a mask of being, I'm just going to be realistic. How many times have you talked yourself out of applying for a job because it didn't meet 100% of the qualifications? Fear convinced you to see the obstacles, but it blinded you to your unique God-given strengths and the possibility that they were looking for someone exactly like you. Fear makes us experts at seeing why something won't work, but amateurs at seeing why it might. When we began to understand that fear shapes our reality, we can become, I just had, this is so funny because I just had an issue, a personal issue with a little bit of fear. And I was going to do this podcast, and this is how the universe always works, isn't it? This is the funny part. So I had to work through it and deal with it. For me, the number one thing I can do with my emotions, because I have so much emotions, empath, whatever you want to call it, I have to do some type of cardio, like physical exercise. Weights work, but I got to get my heart pumping and my blood flowing. And then it helps me process the emotions. So I went for a run. I ran 2.5 miles. And guess what happened? I began to go down. And then I began to think about it and think about this podcast and what was going on. And then I began to feel better and better. So this happens to all of us. But I want us to look at it from a spiritual dimension, and that's fear as a portal. And this is where it gets spiritually interesting. Most spiritual traditions don't tell us to eliminate fear. They tell us to be able to look at it differently. And that's what I was trying to do when I was running on the treadmill. In Buddhism, there's this concept called leaning into the sharp points. And instead of trying to avoid fear, we use it as information. Fear often points us towards our edge, the place where we're ready to grow but haven't yet. Isn't that beautiful? So I begin to look at it and be like, where do I need to grow? In this situation, I was doing something wrong. Nothing bad, really small. So in that situation, I needed to correct myself. And when I corrected myself, guess what happened? When I decided to make the decision to act, then of course, now that fear begins to subside. Now I can look at it and be like, oh, I just need to grow because I have this fear of rejection. But what if fear isn't actually a problem? What if the problem is how fear hijacks our perception? There's a practice I love from somatic therapy. When you notice fear arising, instead of fighting it or analyzing it, you literally expand your visual field. You look up, you look around, take in the whole environment because your nervous system begins to narrow things down. If you begin to do this, especially if you can look out over a big horizon or a long horizon, if you could walk outside and see some mountains or see a hill or see trees, a field way far away. And what this happens is it signals to your nervous system that you're safe. And it allows your perception to naturally expand. And I want you to try this. Think about one of your current fears or challenges. Notice how your body feels. Notice where your attention goes. Now, without changing thought, I want you to leave the thought there. Deliberately soften your gaze. Take in your peripheral vision from your sides. Begin to look around each side. Really try to expand. And then I want you to breathe into your back body and see what shifts. It's amazing. You'll be able to feel that. So let me give you a few other practical tools for expanding perception. And this one I love to use. And this is really simple. It's an affirmation. It's a statement. When you catch yourself in fear-based thinking, ask, what else is true? So what else is true? If you're thinking I can't afford this, also ask, what are 3 ways I could create this income? What else is true? Why have I been putting this off? Oh, okay. I'm fearful in this. Okay. Then what else is true about that? If you're thinking they probably think I'm incompetent, also ask yourself, what evidence do I have that I'm skilled? What evidence do I have that I'm valuable? And I'm not talking about some toxic positivity where you just ignore everything. And you're not denying the fear because there are spiritual teachings that tell you the fear is not even real to deny it. You're just refusing to let it be the only lens in which reality through. The fear goggles, most people have those on, don't they? We're just born that way through evolution to survive. And I want to borrow from Mark Douglas, the book, The Trader in the sense of a stock trader. He said to treat each fear-based thought like a trader treats market information. It's just data. Douglas taught traders to ask, what is the market actually telling me? Versus, what is my fear telling me the market is saying? And that's huge. Because this is one of the situations I had right before the podcast. I had to make a decision on something that was uncomfortable for someone else, work-wise. And I had to look at it and say, what is my fear telling me about this? What is this actually saying? And so I read the emails multiple times, looked over, and I was making it more of a big deal and taking it personal than what it really was. The answer needed to be not personal, not confrontational, just answering the question. Then that fear went away. But at first, the emotions got there and I got fearful and pissed off, but that's really fear, isn't it? And when you can begin to apply it to your life and say, what is this situation actually showing me? Versus what is my fear telling me? What is this situation showing me? Your perception is the fear, right? One of the expansion practices I like to do is set a timer for 2 minutes on your phone and then sit quietly and imagine your awareness expanding. Start with the room you're in. Sometimes I'll do this, and then the building, the neighborhood, the city, the country, the planet, and I'll just zoom out. I'll just feel my body and watch it zoom out. Sometimes I go onto a different planet because this is a form of meditation. I've created a sanctuary on my own planet that I can go to. It's got a rose garden. It's an old church, cool Catholic looking Rome building that I go into. And there's a wooden pew that I sit at. Once I expand and I pull myself away, I even pull myself away from the earth, from the solar system, and I go to the next one. Now I'm far away and in my sanctuary. Only I can be there. I can feel it. And I'm sitting there, and now I can have a conversation. It trains your brain to zoom out from the tunnel vision. It trains your brain to get out of that fear-based survival mode. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Fear isn't your enemy. But if you allow it to control your perception, then it definitely isn't. You have more power than you think to work with. You have control over your nervous system, and you can expand what you're able to see and receive. This week, I challenge you to catch yourself when you get in that fear-based tunnel vision. Then deliberately expand your perception and use the what else is true question. It works so great. If you really need to step away, try the fulfill vision practice where you expand from your room, from where you're sitting. You notice the couch and the ceiling, then your house roof, then your neighborhood, then your city, then your state, then your country, and then you keep zooming out. And guys, I want you to remember this in closing. Spirituality isn't about transcending our human experience. It's about becoming more skillful at working with it, isn't it? And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your experiences. We are on Instagram. Mainly, we post a ton on Instagram, but you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's huge. If you want to do one thing for us, it's the single best way, and it helps other conscious seekers find this content. So until then, guys, I want you to stay curious, stay discerning, and remember, your perception is your power. This is HDL Podcast. Thanks for being here.